Hello YouTube, and welcome back to some more book reviews from me, your host Logan Albright. This is not so much reviews as a haul because I just got back from the magical land of Iceland and I bought a bunch of books when I was there and I thought we could go through them together. As you may know, if you ever look at this bookcase behind me and if you watch some of my videos, I have a strong interest in magic and the occult. It's something I've been studying for well over a decade, and I have well over 200 books in my library related to that subject. And Iceland is a wonderful place for that. Everywhere I went, every bookstore I went had a sizable occult section and a lot of things related to their particular brand of magic in Iceland. And so I got a lot of stuff in those categories, and I was going to go through it with you. But first, I have to talk about Elf School. One of the first things I did when going to Iceland in Reykjavik was go to the Elf School, which I had seen on Atlas Obscura and a number of other places, and I wanted to learn about elves. Elf School was so weird, you guys. It was one of the strangest experiences of my life. It involves a heavy-set Icelandic man named Magnus cramming you into a tiny cluttered room with a few other people and just kind of rambling at you about many different subjects, including Icelandic socialism, the American presidential election, the Icelandic education system, vegetarianism, the afterlife, aliens, and many other things that are not related to elves. Before finally getting around to elves, he talked to us for 4 hours with one small break in the middle to eat pancakes and brown bread and butter and drink coffee and tea. He would often lose his train of thought and wander off and change topics in the middle of a sentence. He would kind of shut down and cease talking for 10 seconds or so and then come back. He would answer phone calls during the session. He would leave the room for 5 minutes at a time during the session. It was deeply strange. None of us were expecting that. None of us really knew what to expect, but we weren't expecting that. But I did learn some stuff about elves. And I got this handy little Elves and Hidden People study book that was handed out to me as part of the course. And I also got a diploma which certifies me as an elf expert. So if you ever have any questions about elves, you know where to come to now. That was really, really weird. But after that, the trip became slightly more normal. It was a beautiful, wonderful trip. And I went to a bookstore in Reykjavik and I bought a few things. I bought this Sorcerer's Screed, two Icelandic books of, this is not two Icelandic books of magic. This is an Icelandic book of magic spells. And it's, the Icelandic tradition is one of Old Norse Vikings and ancient heathenry and Norse paganism. And there's a lot of invocations and a lot of glyphs and runes and things like that are used in their magic. I haven't looked at this yet, but it looks really interesting. It's the kind of stuff that I'm interested in. So I'm excited about that. I also got this book on Icelandic plant magic. I'm not really into plants. Plants are not my thing. But this looks interesting, and it has more than just plants in it. It looks like a very rigorous and strong book. It's got things about food and smoke and incense and all kinds of natural magic kind of stuff. I like kind of ritual magic and more formal stuff, but natural magic is interesting too. And herbalism is not something I know too much about, and this looks pretty cool. I don't have too many books on herbalism, so I need to learn more about it and learn more about how plants interact. So that looks like a good one. This is by Albert Bjorn. And then finally, or no, not finally, I have two more things from this bookstore. I got this Icelandic book of Futhark, the runes. Runes are not something that I really know much about. I've certainly seen them before, and I know vaguely what they are, but I've never studied them and learned them. And this is a book that contains the Elder Futhark, the Younger Futhark, and the Icelandic Futhark. Futhark is an acronym for the first, how many letters? 6 letters of the alphabet, of the runic alphabet. And it's kind of the same way we have alphabet as the Greek alpha, beta. It's just the name of the alphabet. And so this combines a couple of different systems together, and they show you each one and teach you about kind of the hidden meanings behind it. As far as we know, there's a lot we don't know about these things, but it looks really interesting. And that's a subject, as someone who's interested in linguistics as well as magical systems, I think learning this alphabet will be very useful. And, Tolkien was a fan of runes, and he put those in a lot of his work. He had his own set that was distinct from the Old English or Old Norse or Icelandic Futhark, but I've always wanted to learn them, and so this is my opportunity. So that looks like a really cool book. And then finally, from the bookstore in Reykjavik, I got this book, this little deck of tarot cards, the Nordic Myths Tarot. And I'm a little bit mixed on the art style on this. I'm a big fan of tarot. I've done a video on tarot before. No one really watched it, but I like tarot a lot. And I have several decks. It's more than several, if I'm being honest. And I thought the art in here is a little bit mixed. Some of it is a little bit cartoony for me. but some like that one's a little cartoony for me. But a lot of it is very cool and very interesting. And it is kind of related to the Nordic sagas and the Eddas and things like that, based on the stories that are traditional to Norse paganism. And I thought it was cool. And I've done a couple readings with it since I got it, and I've found them to be pretty insightful. So I think it works pretty well. I'm pretty happy with this deck. I think I'll be using it again in the future. The alteration that this deck makes to the traditional structure is it comes with an additional card. It is Trump number 22, and it's called Diversity. It's not a card that I have employed in my readings because I'm a traditionalist, and I like to use the cards that are from the traditional deck and not add any others. But it's there if you want it. So that's a cool deck, and they had this in both Icelandic and English. I opted to get the English version because I don't speak Icelandic, or not very much anyway. I tried to learn a little bit before going there, mostly unsuccessfully. I learned a few words and phrases, but really it's a pretty difficult language. So I did my best, you know. I was actually surprised at how much written material there is in Icelandic there. I mean, I probably shouldn't have been because that's their language and it's their country, but it's such a small country and such an obscure language. You know, my main language that I study is Welsh, and I've been to Wales 3 times now, and I always find it a little bit difficult to find many books written in Welsh because everybody in Wales speaks English. And so finding authentic Welsh literature is a little tricky. Not so in Iceland. There are many options, you know, like whole rooms full of Icelandic books. So that's great. And I also heard somewhere that Iceland is the highest per capita authors of any country. So there's a lot of writers in Iceland who are writing in Icelandic. And I'm really happy that they're keeping their language and their literary tradition alive, because I think that's excellent. I have a couple more books to show you. I traveled up north to the town of Holmavik, which is about 3 hours north of Reykjavik. And the only reason I went there, it's a long trip for this, but I wanted to go to the Icelandic Museum of Witchcraft and Sorcery. And while I was there, I saw this famous pair of necropants. It's actually a reproduction. It's not the original, but the necropants are a Icelandic magical charm that are derived from skinning the lower half of a dead person and wearing their skin as pants. And you then have to steal a coin from a widow on Christmas Eve and place it in the scrotum of the necropants, and you will then have a purse that never empties, and you will always have money at hand when you need it. A deeply odd item that the Icelandic Museum of Witchcraft and Sorcery had, and I'm glad I got to see it. It's a very small museum. It doesn't have a ton of stuff there. I was a little disappointed in the size of it, but it has some pretty interesting artifacts and a lot of manuscripts and things like that, and so I'm glad I got to see it. And they have a decent gift shop. While I was there, I bought a t-shirt, which I don't have on hand, and I bought this little book of Icelandic fairy tales, because I like fairy tales. It's a little small book. I've read a couple of these, and they're delightful. The English is not perfect in these. There's a couple mistakes that I've noticed, so it's apparently not written in Icelandic and then translated into English by someone whose command of English is imperfect, but they're still very good. I'm enjoying that. And then the last book I got there is this 2 books of Icelandic magic, which is what I was trying to say when I showed you that first book. And these are basically grimoires from the medieval period that have been translated, and all the drawings have been reproduced in here. Grimoires are kind of a curiosity for me. They're interesting to read. They're not very useful or practical. A lot of the spells and stuff require ingredients that are impossible to obtain or rituals that are impossible to perform. So I don't find them very practical, but they're interesting just to kind of read about the history of what people were writing about and doing in terms of magic in days gone by. So I wanted to get a taste of the local flavor of what Iceland had to offer, and those are what I brought back with me. I also brought a couple of CDs because I like music from local places. I haven't listened to them yet. I'm a little skeptical that they're going to be good. I was trying to get recommendations from the locals about what kind of cool Icelandic bands I should listen to, but they seem to be having a hard time recommending things to me. So I bought a couple of things just kind of, at random, just to see if I find anything cool. And I'll let you know if they're cool, but I haven't listened to them yet. So that's kind of a very quick summary of my trip to Iceland and the things I brought back with me. It was a beautiful trip. I really had fun. It's a very interesting culture. It seems like the culture of kind of Norse paganism and their history, their mythic past is still very much alive. I can't really tell how much of it is for the benefit of tourists and how much of it is actually taken seriously by the locals. But they are building a Norse pagan temple called Asatru Temple in Reykjavik. which I went to visit one morning. It is not finished yet. It is still under construction, so there's really nothing to see there. I was a little disappointed, and I wasted an hour of my trip kind of trekking to the outskirts of Reykjavik in the rain and back to see it. But it will be completed at some point, and that's very cool to me that they are reviving their kind of Norse paganism tradition. I think it's a very cool country. So if you have the opportunity, I recommend visiting Iceland, with the caveat that it's a very expensive country once you get there. The flights aren't that bad, but hotels, food, drink, souvenirs, shopping, everything is very expensive once you get there. So be prepared to spend some cash. But the countryside is beautiful. There's lots of natural wonders. There's waterfalls and glaciers and geysers and black sand beaches and volcanoes. And there's a rift in the tectonic plates that separate Europe from Asia, or sorry, Europe from North America are there. It's just lots of interesting stuff to see. Beautiful countryside. I tried lots of exotic foods. I tried the famous fermented shark that everyone talks about, which is not nearly as bad as everyone says it is. I tried horse, I tried puffin, I tried reindeer, I tried whale. Lots of exotic foods, some good, some less good, but a beautiful country and very interesting and very different. So I recommend that you go if you have the opportunity and the means. Until then, I've been your host, Logan Albright. I will come back next week with another book review. It will actually be a book review instead of another haul video. I know I've been doing a lot of those lately. I haven't had as much time to read lately, so now that I'm back in the country, I'm going to try to get back into that, and hopefully I'll get some more book reviews out to you very soon. So check back next Wednesday for that. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, leave a note in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications, and I will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.